Homeward location for these concerts will be Bel Air High School. Please welcome the Maryland Military Band.
Concert of the Maryland Military Band. The Maryland Military Band was established just this summer by the group of musicians you see here on the stage, and we're really looking forward to sharing an evening of special music with you tonight. The membership of this all-volunteer band includes former and retired military musicians, other former and retired service members, music teachers, professional performers, students, and community members from Maryland and the Mid-Atlantic region who share a love of military band music and enjoy giving back to their community. As I'm sure many of you know, 2017 marks the 100th anniversary of the entry of the United States into World War I, the Great War, the war to end all wars. The war had already been going on in Europe for 3 long years, but 1917 was the year that the U.S. began preparing to send troops overseas, eventually mobilizing over 4 million military personnel, including more than 62,000 Marylanders. Our program tonight focuses on the music of that incredible era. This was the age of composers like Irving Berlin, George M. Cohan, Scott Joplin, of course John Philip Sousa and Henry Fillmore, along with Percy Grainger, Ralph Vaughan Williams, Gustav Holst, and so many more who we still know today. You'll hear their music tonight as we feature popular tunes from the U.S. and its allies. From tender ballads like The Rose of No Man's Land, written to pay tribute to the Red Cross nurses who served at the front lines, to the rhythms of Ragtime and Tin Pan Alley, to rousing marches like the Victory Bell, here is our musical tribute to all those who served over there. And now, please welcome to the stage the conductor of the Maryland Military Band, Jari Villanueva. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the playing of our national anthem.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome to the debut concert of the Maryland Military Band. We are so glad to be here this evening up here in Bel Air, Maryland. And Like it was said before, and for those of you who have a program, tonight is going to be all about music from the Great War, World War I. And of course, what better way to start any band concert than with a terrific march written by John Philip Sousa. And we're going to play one of Sousa's probably lesser known pieces, but this particular piece is 100 years old. As a matter of fact, it just reached the 100th year of publication about two months ago. Now, with the outbreak of World War I, John Philip Sousa found himself responding to his patriotic urges. Of course, by 1917, he was touring the world and touring the country with his great concert band, but he joined the United States Navy. He was 62 years old at that time, and what he wanted to do was to organize the bands at the Great Lakes Training Center in Illinois. Now, as the war progressed in Europe, it was felt that it would be only a matter of time that America would be drawn into the war. And of course, the armed forces would have a need for musicians. And Sousa, having spent time with the Marine Band, understood that America would need those musicians and they would need proper training. So he was put in charge of over 300 sailors training for musical duty in the United States Navy. In addition to the bandsmen who were training, there were also the training of buglers who would actually do bugling duty on shipboard. And Sousa combined those buglers and the 300 musicians into what was called the Jackie Band. And he took this 300-piece band around the country during 1917 and 1918 to help raise money for the Liberty Loan and Red Cross drives, and actually raised millions of dollars. And he did this all for $1 a month. He actually refused to take any money from the U.S. government, but the government, the way it's set up, you have to be paid something. So the U.S. Navy paid him $1 a month. As a result, he was given the commission of a lieutenant commander by the end of the war, and it's something that he wore proudly for the rest of his life. From 1918 on to his death in 1932, at all his concerts, he would proudly wear his naval uniform. Now, the march we're going to play for you is called the Naval Reserve, and it's one of his many pieces that he wrote as a salute to the Navy. And it incorporates a song that he wrote, a tune called Blue Ridge. And the words to this are, Blue Ridge, I hear the bugle call. And of course, he's talking about the Blue Ridge Mountains. And fittingly enough, in this march, you're going to hear a bugle call just before the trio. So here is John Philip Sousa's The Naval Reserve March, dedicated to the officers and men of the United States Naval Reserve. Next on our program is a medley of tunes that were popular during World War I. And the arrangement that we're going to play was put together by a fellow by the name of Mayhew Lake. Now, for those who've played in concert bands and have gone through school or played in military bands, the name Mayhew Lake is synonymous with great arrangements of all the standard pieces for band. Around the turn of the century, the big thing was to take orchestral literature and transcribe it for band. Like, so you'd have something like a Tchaikovsky Nutcracker Suite, or maybe the Brahms Academic Festival Overture, which are basically orchestra pieces, but arranged for band. And Mayhew Lake was at the center of doing all this arrangement. He was a graduate of the Boston Conservatory of Music and actually began his career as a violinist with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. But he is best known for taking tunes, popular tunes, and arranging them in great potpourris or great medleys. And he made arrangements for some of the great performers of the time, including Victor Herbert, George M. Cohan, Percy Grainger, Edwin Franklin Goldman, and also John Philip Sousa. And he also had some time to write pieces of his own, including a piece called The Rag Baby and a ragtime travesty on Carmen. I'd like to hear that sometime. But our piece that we're going to play for you consists of the tunes Goodbye Broadway, Hello France, My Belgium Rose, It's a Long Way to Berlin, but We'll Get There, The Rose of No Man's Land, K-Katy, Keep Your Head Down, Fritzie Boy, Where Do We Go From Here, Boys, Homeward Bound, and of course the famous Over There. Now these are probably all tunes you're not familiar with. It's interesting that these tunes, this medley was written in 1918 with the hopes that a lot of these tunes would become very famous, but only a few of them actually did. But I think you'll enjoy this nevertheless. This is our little arrangement of World War I tunes in a medley called Over There. and we won't come back till it's over there. Wow, really gets the blood going. At about this time, 100 years ago, America was preparing to go over there. In April, Congress declared war, and of course, with that declaration of war came the activation of military units throughout the country. The standing army, the professional army at that time during World War II was still a rather small organization. And so what they had to rely on was the states and their national guards to become federalized and go over there. In the state of Maryland, we had thousands of soldiers who were actually called up and prepared to go over to fight the war. They would become part of a larger divisions. The 29th Division, for example, was made up of Marylanders, was made up of, made up of units from both the North and the South. It's very interesting that in the 29th Division, which is called the Blue and the Gray, had units whose actual descendants had fought against each other during the Civil War, but now we're combining together to go over to Europe. Among some of these groups to go over there were African American soldiers that were actually put together into National Guard units. These African Americans were segregated at that time, so there was no mixture between black and white soldiers. One unit that really stood out was a group that came from the New York National Guard. They were the 369th Infantry Regiment. They would become known as the Harlem Hellfighters. And they were among the first troops to be sent over to Europe. And they were actually, at the beginning of the war, put under French command. So if you see pictures of the 369th, you'll see these African-American soldiers in U.S. uniforms, but wearing French helmets. One of the unfortunate, sad things about this war is that the African-American troops were the first ones to be fed into battle before the white troops arrived, almost used as cannon fodder. However, they were well respected by the French, and the French rewarded them with the highest medals of bravery that they could bestow on their soldiers. Now, with the 369th was a regimental band that was led by a black performer by the name of James Reese Europe. He was also known as Jim Europe. And he was a New York band leader playing social orchestras at the time. He made, before the war, he made himself famous as the band leader that accompanied the Castle dance team. It was these two dancers who were very famous, and he provided a lot of the music for them. He got a commission in the New York National Guard and led the 369th band over and brought them over to Europe. And they played ragtime, they played the popular music of the United States, and they were also known for playing jazzy versions of the Star-Spangled Banner and jazzy versions of the French national anthem, all of which delighted the Europeans to no end. They also recorded, while they were in France, they made a recording of the Stars and Stripes Forever, as well as jazz numbers like the Memphis Blues. We're going to play a number for you right now that he recorded, a piece called the Castle House Rag. And this piece was originally written for the Irene and Vernon Castle, that famous dance team, and it's a very quick, jazzy, syncopated piece, and I think you'll enjoy it. This is the Castle House Rag. Our next piece of music is a popular hymn and actually comes from a suite called The Planets, written by Gustav Holst. In The Planets, there's a thematic material that runs through one of the movements, and it is this piece that we're about to play for you, the tune I Vow To Thee, My Country. Now, the tune itself is a British hymn based on a poem written by Sir Cecil Spring Rice. And Holst took the music from The Planets and reorchestrated it, rescored it as a hymn so that the words would fit to the music. And the piece, the hymn itself, if you go to the hymn book, it's called Thaxted, because that the reason it's called that, the hymn tune, is that's the name of the town where Holst actually wrote the hymn itself, and an area where he lived. Now, the hymn itself is associated with Remembrance Day services all over the Commonwealth of Nations. And if you'll notice, I'm wearing a red poppy. On Remembrance Day, our course, which is our Veterans Day, Armistice Day, November 11th, the poppy is associated with that. So when you see someone wearing this, it's in remembrance of those who have given their lives to our country. And of course, it's very popular in England on that day to wear the poppy. The song itself, the hymn, was sung at the funeral of Sir Winston Churchill in 1965. It was also a popular favorite hymn of Princess Diana, and she had asked for it to be played at her wedding. And then it was also performed at her funeral. The words to this, and it's a very nationalistic piece, and very British. The words are, I vow to thee, my country, all earthly things above, entire and whole and perfect, the service of my love, the love that asks no questions, the love that stands the test, that lays upon the altar the dearest and the best, the love that never falters, the love that pays the price, the love that makes undaunted the final sacrifice. And there's another country I've heard so long ago, most dear to them that love her, most great to them we know. We may not count her armies, we may not see her king. Her fortress is a faithful heart, her pride is suffering. And soul by soul and silently her shining bounds increase. And her ways are of gentleness, and all her paths are peace. It's a wonderful, wonderful hymn. This is a setting that I came across that was originally written for orchestra, and I thought it would be just a wonderful setting for band. The introduction has a very British, Irish quality to it that you'll hear in the piccolo playing almost like a tin whistle at the beginning, and then we launch into the main melody of the tune. This is I Vow to Thee, My Country. forgot to recognize our great piccolo soloist on the tin whistle, Amy. Beautiful, really nice. We're going to salute our allies, our French allies at this time, and play a piece, Great March, called Le Regiment de Sambre et Meuse. And it's based on a simple melody that was very, very popular to the French public. And this whole tune was actually based on a poem written back in the 1890s. And this piece became very popular during World War I, and there were many, many arrangements of this made for all different types of ensembles, from piano solo, men's glee clubs. You'll find it with small brass groups, orchestra arrangements, and of course the original brass and wind arrangement that we find that the French actually still play to this day. If you go onto like YouTube and watch the festivities on Bastille Day, when they march all the French troops down, this is one of the big pieces that you'll hear played over and over again. Now, interestingly enough, it has crept into our American culture in that it's played at every home game at the Ohio State University football team. If anyone is very familiar with the Ohio State and their great football team, during their halftime show, they play this piece and then go into their fight song, and they do what's called Script Ohio, where they spell out the words, the letters to Ohio. And the tuba player comes dancing out at the very end and dots the I in Ohio. It's a very big thing and a very high honor for the sousaphone player to be chosen for that. But this is the piece that leads into it. So it's amazing how these pieces of music that have come to us from the turn of the century are still part of our culture today. So this is our salute to the French, Le Regiment de Sambre et Meuse. you can just see the French Foreign Legion marching down the street with that. It's great music the French have. We're going to turn back to some English music right now. Actually, this is an Irish tune arranged by an Australian. Percy Grainger, who lived from 1882 to 1961, was a piano prodigy who turned composer. And there's a little bit of a Baltimore connection to this too, in that Percy Grainger visited Baltimore at one time, gave a recital at the Peabody Conservatory. He was known for his wonderful compositions, his delightful arrangements, and his strange personal habits. But he was somebody that admirers really enjoyed and still recognize today because he, as they used to say, he had the supreme virtue of never being dull. He was born in Australia, but came to the United States at the outbreak of World War II and enlisted in the United States Army as a musician. He played the saxophone in one of the Army bands, and he went on to really champion the saxophone, and also was very interested in what was called free music machines. These were machines that predated electronic synthesizers, so he was a little ahead of his time. His arrangements that he did, his compositions and his orchestrations are just wonderful and are played by some of the top bands still today. They're just really hard to play, but they're so great because they contain such great musical gems in them. Now, the tune we're going to play for you is the Irish tune from County Derry that we all probably recognize as "Oh Danny Boy." That's the tune. And this arrangement that you're about to hear that Percy Grainger did is what we like to say, the arrangement of it that you'll hear. And it's been scored not only for concert band, but for orchestra and also for brass band. If you've ever seen the movie Brassed Off, you'll hear that arrangement for brass being played. Also, if you've ever seen the movie Memphis Belle about the B-17 bomber in World War II, the composer for that movie, George Fenton, uses music of Percy Grainger, uses this arrangement and incorporates it into his thematic material for that movie. So, but we like to come back to the original here and play for you the Irish tune from County Derry, arranged by Percy Grainger. we're going to do a little bit of a scene change here and feature our woodwind quintet playing a tune called Colonel Bogey. Now, Colonel Bogey is probably, outside of, the Stars and Stripes Forever, the most famous march ever written, because everybody recognizes it. And certainly it was one of the most profitable ones for the composer. By the 1930s, it had sold over 1 million copies of this, and also turned up in a 1958 movie called The Bridge Over the River Kwai. Great tune that everybody knows and everybody whistles. And of course, it's a fine march that was written by a fellow by the name of F.J. Ricketts, who was a military bandmaster and director of music for the Royal Marines at Plymouth. Because at the time of his service, bandmasters were not encouraged to have professional lives outside of the military, so Ricketts published the tune Colonel Bogey and his other compositions under a pseudonym, Kenneth Alford. So the great Kenneth Alford is really Lieutenant F.J. Ricketts. But everybody wants to know, who was Colonel Bogey? It had to be somebody. Now the story goes that there was a certain fiery colonel who was known just before the war in 1914, where Ricketts was stationed in Scotland. And of course, the recreation of Scotland, of course, is to golf. And Ricketts would go out there and watch this colonel. And one of the colonel's peculiarities was that instead of shouting, "For!" when he hit the thing, he would whistle instead. He would whistle, I can't whistle very good, so it's dee-dum, dee-dum, dee-dum. If you've ever been to a Yankees game, you've heard that whistle. That's bad. Those Yankees fans know what I'm talking about. But anyway, those two notes became stuck in his head so much that Ricketts wrote this piece, Colonel Bogey. So you'll hear that over and over again. Is our woodwind quintet ready to go? All right. Oh. We're gonna get a little count. Okay. All right. No, won't. the Maryland Military Band Woodwind Quintet. How about another nice big hand for them? I don't know if you could hear it from out there, but not only did we have a bogey up here, but we had a birdie up here too. It's really something. Wonderful playing. Well, we're going to once again reach over to our British allies and play a medley of two tunes. But before we do, let me just take this opportunity and thank all the great members of this band who've come together to help form the Maryland Military Band. And what we're going to be doing over the next, well, hopefully decades or so, is provide music at concerts, provide music for military ceremonies. As you know, with the scaling back of military music, there's always a need to have a band to play for a change of command ceremony or a retirement ceremony or a parade or anything like that. And also a terrific need for this style of music for Veterans Day concerts and Memorial Day concerts and Independence Day, of course. So we're hoping to fill that need. So if you have any desire to have a band like this, please get in touch with us. Our website should be up and running real soon, and so you can reach us. It's up now. Militaryband.org. Marylandmilitaryband.org. And you can write to us at info@. Correct? So you'll be able to find us, and hopefully you'll hear us play at the Veterans Day and Memorial Day, and also 4th of July. Reaching back, and once again, I do want to thank these terrific musicians for being part of this. I can get up here and just wave my arms all day, but without these fantastic players to play, it's nothing. So I'm really glad that they're able to take the notes that are written down and make such beautiful music. Now we're going to reach to our British friends. One thing we have to remember is that by 1917, the war had been going on for 3 years over in Europe, and a lot of great music had been written already. Before guys like George M. Cohan got their hands, and Irving Berlin got their hands on writing tunes. There's some great tunes, and we're going to play a medley now of two tunes that were popular in the British war effort that are very familiar to us today. The first of the medley is "It's a Long, Long Way to Tipperary," which was actually a British music hall tune written in 1912. And the second one of this medley is "Pack Up Your Troubles in Your Old Kit Bag and Smile." Yeah, everybody knows that tune. That's great. And that was written in 1915. Now, this particular arrangement, you're going to hear those two tunes. And what's interesting about this arrangement is that you'll also hear the verse to the tune. That's the little bit of melody that comes before the actual tune itself. And of course, since I did the arrangement, I like to write in bugle calls. So you're going to get to hear a British bugle call called "Fall In." It's still used today. And then at the very end, with this arrangement, you're going to hear all the tunes together, "Long Way" and "Pack Up Your Trouble" on top of each other. Kind of a fun arrangement. This is my World War I medley. heard a lot of people singing out there. It was pretty cool. Really nice. Okay, we're gonna play a march right now, written by a guy I know absolutely nothing about. Paul O. Schaefer. The only thing I know is that he wrote this march and it was published by the Fillmore Brothers Publishing Company out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Now the Fillmore Publishing Company was run by a trombone player, composer by the name of Henry Fillmore, who was one of America's great composers in his own right. He wrote just dozens and dozens of great marches that are almost as equal to those of John Philip Sousa. In fact, one of his pieces, a piece called Military Escort, Sousa commented on it that he wished that he had written it because it was such a delightful piece. Well, this piece that we're going to play for you is called Victory Bell. Now, one of the things about Henry Fillmore is that he wrote so much music that he published under other names. And it's quite possible that this was written by Henry Fillmore because it sounds like it could have been. It's just full of fun. It's full of just American joy and enthusiasm. and it commemorates victory of World War I. You actually hear the bells, the chiming of the victory bell in the woodwind parts. So here we go with Victory Bell, written by Paul O. Schaefer, maybe could be Henry Fillmore.
All right, before we finish the concert with our last song, I'm Paul Swenson, one of the band managers, along with Heather Faust. Thank you for all your hard work in helping pull this together. One thing we like to do is recognize people for, doing awesome things. And so Jari Villanueva and Heather Faust, front and center. So, for those of you who don't know, Jari was the conductor of the Maryland Defense Force Band. He just retired about 2 months ago after 9 years of service in that role. And Heather as well, I think you, 8 years, and Heather was our first sergeant for the last couple of years. So she had a major role as the senior enlisted in the band. And a lot of the people you see here are either former members of the Maryland Defense Force or current members, and we just wanted to use this opportunity to thank Jari and Heather for their many years of service. So could we give them a round of applause? And, We made these plaques, which are signed by all the band members, kind of showcasing, you know, all the good times. So, so thank you, Jari and Heather. So this is from all the band members. And one other thing, in his day job, Jari was the director of the Maryland National Guard Honor Guard for the last 10 years, which he also retired from about 2 months ago. And he was responsible for all the boys that would, and girls that would remember our... The soldiers and airmen, sorry. I'm not wearing the right uniform today to know the right words, but he was responsible for all of those military funeral honors within the state of Maryland for Army and Air Force. And so the Honor Guard has a plaque for him as well to thank him for his service to the state of Maryland and the Maryland National Guard Honor Guard. So thank you, Jari. Signed by the Adjutant General. 10 years. Ah. So.
10-year certificate.
Yeah. So this is yeah, for 10 years of service with the state of Maryland, and his 10-year pin. Ooh. So. Right. And this is Al Bundy. He's taking over for Jari. So.
I told him everything he knows.
So thank you so much, Jari and Heather, for all of your service, and I look forward to continuing on with you guys in this new musical ensemble. And with that, I'll pass the mic.
Thanks. Really unexpected, and I'm really grateful. Heather, thank you so much, too. And folks, yeah, these are going to find very nice places in the house, a very special place of honor. Well, thank you. We've come to the end of our program here, and we've sort of saved the best for last. You know, all the great tunes started being written as America got into the war. George M. Cohan, Irving Berlin seized upon the great opportunity to write great tunes. One of the tunes I forgot to bring, of course, is Oh, I Hate to Get Up in the Morning, you know, that great tune by Irving Berlin. But there was another guy who was turning out just as many tunes and such popular ones. Of course, I'm talking about George M. Cohan, who published over 300 tunes during his lifetime, including the standards Over There, Give My Regards to Broadway, Yankee Doodle Boy. As a composer, he was one of the first members of the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, ASCAP. And just before World War I, he was known as the man who owns Broadway. In fact, he had like 3 or 4 Broadway shows happening at the same time. And he is considered the father of American musical comedy. And if you've ever seen the movie on his life, Yankee Doodle Dandy, that was done in 1942 with James Cagney, thank you. Oh, couldn't remember that name. And of course, there was a Broadway musical based on his life too, called George M, that came out in 1968 with Joel Grey. And if you go to Times Square in New York, you'll see the statue of Cohan right in the middle, overlooking Broadway. One of the other things too about Cohan is that in 1936, he was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal for his contributions to music during World War I, particularly the song You're a Grand Old Flag and Over There. So we're kind of glad to end our concert tonight with a medley of 4 Cohan tunes, which consist of Give My Regards to Broadway, I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy, Over There, and You're a Grand Old Flag. And of course, I also had to write a bugle call into this one too. You'll hear a little snippet of To the Color, which is the bugle call that honors our American flag. Once again, we are very honored to be here tonight. The Maryland Military Band, our debut concert. Once again, please give a great hand for these wonderful musicians behind me. Here we go with 4 Cohan songs.